Hello, everybody. Yes, hi, I'm Clifford Bates, and today is a Friday live stream. Yay. Um, it's earlier here in Poland because I mean, I've agreed to always do these. The new Friday live streams are going to be done at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not 5 p.m., but sorry, not 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 11 p.m. a.m. 11 a.m. 11 in the morning on Fridays, Eastern Standard Time, and technically around 5 p.m. Central European Time. But yet, this past weekend in America, you guys had America had daylight savings time, and they went ahead an hour. So that means, but in Europe, we haven't had, Poland hasn't have its daylight savings time thing yet. So there's instead of being a 6 hour difference, now it's a 7 hour difference. So I'm recording now at 4. I just had to make sure this, and I was a little late doing it. I'm not as organized today for many reasons. No, it's not organized. Uh, 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 I'm waiting for something to do. Things I came to my office late today because I just slept. I just slept in this morning. I didn't fall. I was a bad boy. I didn't fall asleep until like around almost 5 in the morning. And when I finally collapsed, when I finally went to bed and got to sleep, I woke up around noontime. So I'm still kind of like a little tired still, and I stayed out in bed a little longer. Um, I have no real talks about this. I promised people I'd say things. The schedule I'm working on to get the new schedule for the live streams and rebranding the live stream on Friday, making it, instead of messing around on a Friday afternoon. It's kind of maybe Friday morning. Talk in that sense. We'll change the title, and I still haven't rebranded yet. I'm in the process of it. What else? There's not really much to say. I mean, I've had a hiatus from recording. I haven't, I'm kind of froze. I have still previous recording issues done, so I've got some. I probably will get done on start recording again, finishing the book 6 of the ethics, and start set book 7 sometime this weekend. I suspect. I had something wrong with my voice in the middle of like Tuesday. Tuesday, I was kind of like something. I came home and I had something bugged, something in my something that just stomach problems in that sense. Something acidy, very acidy, and and then it something wasn't digesting properly. It was weird. It was so my Wednesday was just I didn't really do much on Wednesday. Um, I rested. I just rested Friday, Wednesday. To be honest, I didn't record. I taught on Thursday, and um, uh, I was hoping to get more work done, but I didn't get much work done in terms of teach. I was teaching things, and a little frustrated with my course in Norwich because the students are not really posting early in the week, and because of that, everything is kind of heavily on the going heavily on the weekend. And that's not usually good in online education. So this is like that. Correlates is last week. What we covered on this was one of the participants who let's see. I always want to. I mean, we look at the my current. What is it? I haven't responded to. Yeah, Corliss, who usually joins us or comes in late, he posted 4 or 5 hours ago on the March 8th video, where we talked about AA, because he asked a question to us about this, and I addressed the question of AA's kind of hope of a right wing, coup d'etat, and I kind of did that. But I also addressed what I considered one of the problems I had with AA's analysis on political things is the boom of truth theory, and of course, he. I think in many ways he gave a very good point. He says, he goes in the note, I'm curious how Parvini will approach boom of truth regime, whether he will attempt to follow the politics approach or whether it be more centered on culture and literature. I think it's more centered on culture and literature. AA's, I think he has tons of videos on this. He has a series, complete series, a whole series on the boom of truth regime and on the generational truth regime in that sense. He could make a book on this. There is, given all that he has already produced on this, there's about 2 or 3 dozen videos on the boom of truth regime and what he's done. It is not just a new idea. It is something that he, academic Agent Parvini, has really dealt with. He talked about the generational aspect of it. He has videos on the, and it's English centric character that is, I would consider very, it's actually done, and therefore it is cultural. It is more cultural than political in the sense. I think Koretz's comment that he would follow a politics approach or a culture literature approach. He says, since 80s economic liberalism combined with a social and cultural left wing progressive outlook does seem to have become established in a lot of Western countries. I assume this is something like AA's boom of truth concept referring to. And I think that is, I think this is the point here. There's been I don't think it's a mixture. I think we have to understand that the current ideological frame is kind of it is something that is common among all the Western developed countries. That is neoliberalism. And I'd be careful, not pure liberalism, but a neoliberalism which defends capitalism and large wealth production capacities. But at the same time, this is not pure. It is made its peace with the state. If actually this is in many ways more corporatist in that sense. That as this is I remember Milton Friedman is always right that the big capitalism is not about big corporations. Big corporations are the enemy of true capitalism. And Friedman is absolutely right about this. Big business and big industry, big sectors are elites and oligarchs, and they will use the state to protect themselves. But the state is a protection mechanism for them to prevent new forces to compete and entity with them. So neoliberalism is a kind of liberalism that is, in other words, that's the big thing. What does liberalism mean? Liberalism is a big concept, 16th century concept. It is the idea that the state is done, liberalism, concedes traditions and Hobbes, the idea that the purpose of the state is to secure the interest of this, and that the rise of private property, and that the protection of private property with Locke. Locke makes a little, Locke is kind of like that little clearer possession of a liberal character of the liberal state in that sense. This idea of the protection of capital and private rights, the rights of the people, rights. Liberalism means fundamentally that the state is there to secure the rights of the individual. Okay, in other words, not families, not structures like this. That the individual agent themselves is the agent of political construction, the constitutional power. There's no other intermediating institutions. Okay. In other words, the only thing is that the state is the body, the state and society. See, that's and this is the problem. In modern theory, modern state theory, there is this problem about the society, because the thing that creates the modern state is also what creates the society, the social contract, the act of constituting the you know the act of a moment where the individuals wishing to escape the state of nature actualize their agreement through consent to form the community, the political community, the body politic. And in doing so, they create the state, and they create this, and by implication, they create the society. Thus, society in this everything thus is a social contract. There is no pre-existing, and this is the problem. I don't think you can argue in Locke. Anarchy means anarchy, and that no social, not only there's no political structure, there's also no real social structure. There's only individual wills. This is why you can say Rousseau's critique in the second discourse on inequality of Hobbes, saying Hobbes, it's not going to be, people aren't going to fight. It's going to be, people are going to be afraid. You're not going to have, in other words, this idea of people who are going to be have pride or ambition or have willingness to conflict imposes, pride is a social contract. Desire to protect oneself is that it may be natural, but at the same time that you'd fight, this is actually courage, and these things are social, in many ways, products of society. The individual alone is powerless in that sense. And these isolated individual, and I think this is the point that Rousseau really does well to address in a social contract, and why people should pay attention to Rousseau here. Rousseau would suggest that Hobbes's position, Hobbes, he accepts Hobbes's premise, but then shows that Hobbes's argument doesn't follow his premise. In other words, his kind of the argument he's making for it about the pride, that no, what you get instead is fear and people fleeing and not fighting. Maybe you'd have some individuals who are aggressive and will fight because they will take out of survival need or want, right? But for the most part, the early humans will flee. These individuals. Now the problem here is, well, how can you have there's a twofold problem here. That is, how do they perpetuate? In other words, the family. In other words, that family kin relationships must exist somehow, and that therefore there must be some emergence of the early social before the emergence of this. But this is something that Rousseau kind of just. Rousseau makes the point that society emerges when people say, "This is mine," and other people agree with it. So therefore, society emerges, and then later political form emerges out of society, right? That is the kind of Montesquieuian and French model, that the political emerges out of the social. Hobbes wants to say, nah, doesn't want. He's afraid of the social. Hobbes is very much afraid of the social. He doesn't want anything to trump the political, and thus this is why for Hobbes the social, and this is why even Rousseau, while accepting Hobbes, is forced into the problem of giving the society and the political form a simultaneous beginning. So all of this leads us to the problem here, that is what is going on at this moment, this individual liberalism in a sense. Liberalism, as in its traditional form, was always kind of a structure, and liberalism kind of made peace with Christianity in the 16th and 17th century, mostly 17th century and 18th century. It made peace with liberals, the Christianity, particularly with Protestant Christianity. Catholic Christianity was more hostile to liberalism. Protestant Christianity and liberalism emerge at around the same time. They are both critical. They share a common critique of the Roman Church. So there is something interesting that some people argue that liberal origins of liberalism finds itself in the Reformation, and the Reformation, in other words, the question is the Reformation an act of liberalism? Is it part of the component of liberalism, or is this a separate thing? I believe it's a separate thing. I think it's a fundamentally separate thing. I think these things are kind of this is the famous correlation and causation problem. I think there's a correlation between the Protestant Reformation and the origins of liberalism, and they influence each other, but there's no, this idea that they're either the same or they're interconnected and causing. They are related, they are correlated, but they're not necessarily, and they do influence each other. They have impact. But I think conceptually, philosophically, they're completely different. And I think this difference does then, therefore, the difference of it, therefore, in one sense, there is this kind of agreement between them, but at the same time, there's a divergence. You can see that more in Spinoza and what Spinoza does to religion in that sense, and tries to. You can see this a little bit in some of the radicals in the 19th century, 18th and 19th, turning in from the 18th and 19th century, like people like Paine and the English radicals. And therefore, that is the trajectory. There's two kind of liberalisms. There's a liberalism that was kind of friendly with Christianity, particularly its Protestant form. And then there was a liberalism that was opposed to it, or that agreed with it tactically at the time, but then did not. It was only a marriage of convenience, not a marriage of principle. So therefore, this is what we have to be careful about: the origins of liberalism. The origins of liberalism is a very complex structure. There's difference between this is why we say, like my teacher, my mentor Mel Bradford would say, the old Whig versus the new Whig, right? The Whig was the conception of sign up, but the Whigs aren't liberal. Yes, they are. The English tradition of the Whig is a liberal. It was a critique of this. The old Whigs were more. They were more defenders of custom, tradition, and maybe even religion than the new Whigs. The new Whigs were more rationalistic. They followed the logical principles of Locke and the radicals, who then produced the radicals. Okay, it's the new Whigs who will produce. It is the not Pierce. What's his name? Priestley, and those people who will eventually come to produce the new generation of radicals, of the Godwins and James Mills and what was the other one? Benson's even, and that's along with Paine. This is and Mary Wollstonecraft, the radicals in that sense. What Rousseau had? Rousseau's a critic of liberalism in a sense. Rousseau is more kind of, he sees it, he likes some of it, but doesn't like other parts of it. He's more of a critic than an advocate. But what happens is the advocates of it adapt aspects of the criticism and modify, use some of what Rousseau has criticized, and then correct or change liberalism to address those criticisms. Okay, that's why we could say someone like Kant and Hegel are in sense or has a liberal are children of liberalism as well. So even though they have conservative element, therefore there is also within a liberal tradition there's conservative as well as radical elements in it. Okay, that is the what you can call them, and that is the joke. This is why, we look at someone like what's his name? Come on, we had people who were on the left 20, 30 years ago who are now kind of on the right. This is because why? Because it's not that sometimes they're the position of liberalisms or the policy issues that the modern younger liberals will have are different. Will focus on other things that the older generation of liberals will think is problematic or don't agree with, or cross lines that they do not think is correct. Cross lines, and this is like Dave Rubin, right? I don't think Dave Rubin is a conservative in any sort of word, but many people would talk about him as a conservative or what do you call it? In other words, this is and actually this is the problem here. This is what is meant by conservative, is a very changeable thing. It is a meaningless term in one sense, from the point of view of principle. It is not an ideology. Conservative is not an ideology. It is a stance. Conservatism is not a principle. Conservatism is a stance to conserve that has a kind of principle in it, a logic or a reason of being in it, but it's not an ideal point. It has no real fundamental ideal point. But while liberalism does, liberalism has its idea of the role of the origins of the individual. The goal of this is to protect the individual, and that the individual is the basis of the social, and that all social structures are just conglomerations or aggregations of individuals. And things like the family. This is where even the radical Marxists, are liberals ultimately, because they don't believe the family is an autonomic structure. They argue that the family is something that is social. It is a social construct that, in fact, that harms individuals. It is a institution that would misdirect, harm, and limit individuals, and that only by freeing them or liberating human beings from family and other institutions, then you get this, pure freedom that has gone to this. And the radicals would even say that the state itself is an oppressive entity. This is someone like Soros, Sorel, and this crowd, where the anarchism goes too far in that sense. Now, this whole discussion of liberalism that I raised here was all response to the question of the boomer truth. Point is, because I have a problem. This is the thing I'm going to say, that Corliss is right, that there is something about the boomers that merged neoliberalism with progressive left wings, the left position, the radical left. And again, this is a marriage of, like the early origins of liberalism with Protestant Christianity. One can argue this is not a marriage of principle, but a marriage of tactical convenience. Both sides are that the progressive left is benefiting and getting power, encroaching itself, and getting access to the wealth and power that the neoliberal system with its corporations and its structure and its transnational entities and these things give them access to, and that this gives them access to control. Okay. And why does the neoliberals do this? The neoliberals do this as kind of, there's twofold reason. One is cover. They're doing this as a mechanism to protect themselves against the critique of the left and the left wing critique. And they think by co-opting them. Okay, this is the famous problem of can you co-opt the enemy? Can you, I'm going now. This is the same, silly logic that I think many conservatives had with the Nazis. Oh, we'll just in Germany, 1932. Oh, we have to put them in there. We ask them these things, but we can control now. I say, oh, wait a minute. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? This is a bad example. Oh, you're going to see that this is going to be the same thing they're going to use against Trump. And no, they're really fundamentally different things. There is a legitimate problem here, and that problem is what to do when you what to do about the question of the mistake that the neoliberals making is the exact same mistake that the nationalists made with the Nazis, thinking that they could make a tactical relationship, they could control them. No, it gets the because remember, I think this is where Trotsky's right. Trotsky argues that Trotsky in his history of the Russian Revolution says the one who is the most ruthless and most willing to impose his will and will do anything and not hesitate to do anything will win in this kind of struggle. And I think this is the mistake that liberals misunderstood. They did not perceive. They thought, I think they're making the neoliberals are making a mistake here. They don't understand that they think the other side is kind of powerful but stupid. Now the question is, are they as ruthless as I'm not convinced that the progressive left is ultimately as ruthless as, let's say, Marxist thugs. I think there's a thuggish element among them who are ruthless. And this is Antifa, right? The Antifa, which we have to always distinguish between the Antifa, I think Paul Gottfried's recent book on Antifa is very good, but I would even argue you have to distinguish between the intellectual capacity, the intellectuals of Antifa, who are always were neo-Marxist analyticals, and had very little social in common with the rank and file of it. And what happens here is sometimes the rank and file take control. And the rank and file are brutal, nasty thugs who will have no compulsion. They may be not that bright, but they they will, bash heads and do things. And this is the problem about this that the intellectual. And maybe this is my problem with elite theory. That elites are not as elites simply just don't rule in that fundamental sense. They need authority. They need to get the support and authority of the people, because if the elites lack that authority, there's not enough of them to beat down the masses. It may be the argument is, well, they're smarter than and coordinated, but man, Machiavelli's right here in that sense. It's that the optimists, so the elites are made and unmade all the time. You can make or unmake them. It's the powerful who can make and unmake. And that power can be. The question is, is it capable of? In other words, is the one making and unmaking capable of doing this and controlling the people and knowing how to, guide them? In many ways, Hitler's ability came from the people themselves, and it came from his ability to mirror them, and through charisma, in that sense. Is the charismatic character of Hitler was, was his speech, his rhetoric, his imagery, and these things just were mirrors to the Germans and themselves. And I think we have to understand that in that sense. This is why people misunderstand. Charismatic is bad. No, this is why Weber's discussion of charisma in his origins of his vocation of politics. Politics is calling. 1919 Munich lecture, second lecture, is actually very important because he says that you can't have modern democratic societies cannot, particularly modern democratic societies, will always tie with charismatic leaders. And this is something that Aristotle in his Politics even argued, that the large-scale mass societies of the workers of the Venezuela will always lead to charismatic leaders. And this is now, and the question, this is the perception in book 4 of the Politics, is that this is always bad, but no, because I think this is a kind of class. If you come from it from the oligarchy perspective or aristocratic perspective, yes, but and even in book 6, he even offers a mechanism that you can establish a charismatic government. And what is the best way of doing it? There's corrections. There's good charismatic leadership and bad charismatic leadership. It's not all charismatic leadership. Not all demagogues are bad. See, the problem is the term demagogue have such a negative stereotype. The term itself has come to mean something bad. Whereas it just means popular leader. Popular leader. That's all it means in the Greek. And that the negative aspect was the aristocratic contempt of the people. Okay, it is when you have contempt of the people that you view the demagogue as bad. Now, demagogues can be bad, as the people themselves can be bad. The many can be bad, but the many can be decent as well. They may not be. It is like that they may be perfectly virtuous. Unlikely, but not bad. They can be not base, not vicious. Some can, if they're corrupted, they become vicious and base. But they can lean towards the good, the virtuous. This is the problem here. This is the fundamental aspect, and why elites. What are elites? Elites are nothing more than the emergence of people who are better than the average. That's what they are. They are the emergence of the fewer people who because of their abilities and their things, or their luck, abilities, inheritance, and things like this, that they are better than the average Joe. They have more wealth. They have better family. Their families are more intact in that sense. That their families, because of their families' longevity and their intactness, they have capital. They have more capital, and they were good at managing their capital, or they were better at getting capital. They're wealthy. They have wealth. In other words, there's resources, and they have enough, lots of it. So therefore, that status above them, and the average does not. So therefore, you have that fundamental difference of the elite. The elite is the ones who are, the notables, the ones who are you notice them. They're not average. They're not typical. Okay. So therefore, the elites are this merely that which emerges, and the question is, well, what's going to happen to them? Well, of course, they will form their own interest. They'll have their own way. They may have different ways of life, and that these things will emerge and shape the characteristic of the thing. Now, I think this is the classics of political analysis, and even societal analysis. Okay. Now, going back to the point about this, that we kind of want to understand why liberalism is mixed here. This and what is the boom of truth we think. I think that's the problem about this. I don't think this is a conscience. This is historicism. I mean, to argue that one generation or generation has a uniform consciousness, this is as odious as historicism, that one period of time has a very specific consciousness as well. I don't think there's collective consciousness in the sense. Individuals have consciousness. See, this is the problem. I think social structures are them, but to attribute them a mind is problematic. They have deliberation. They have collective deliberation, but not collective mind. This is the danger inherent in the anthropomorphization, making like an animal, a human being, anthropomorphization. I'm lost the word. I'm sorry. Anthropomorphic, okay, but that is making something like human beings and human actions. But anthropomorphizing this political, making it human. The state is not human. It is not literally a human body. We're speaking. This is the problem with metaphors. I've been really thinking about the limits of metaphor. A lot of political analysis, a lot of argument is metaphor. But the problem with metaphor is that, well, like statistic, like an average, a metaphor may not be real. It only may be seeming to be rather than being. Metaphors are there is similarity. There's some similarity between the thing. I'm comparing something to another. A relationship or a symbol or a thing. That I'm comparing it to something else. So if given that it's true here, it's going to be true here. And well, we have to say carefully here that maybe this is inaccurate. Maybe from the point of view of what is going on. And that collective analysis here is that we can attribute a collective mind to this, to a group. Okay. No, there is mind at play. There is a aggregation of minds that therefore lead to a direction. There's collective judgment, collective reasoning and collective judgment. That is not a unified mind. Thus, the problem of boomer truth, about generational truth, is a kind of historicism in the sense. Because it's attributing to a demographic, a large-scale generational demographic, a similar. Now, of course, it's true that a generation, any group can have, any type of demographic group can have characteristics. But like any demographic statement, there's going to be a distribution to it. All right? And that what we typically assert to be the characteristic is usually the norm. What we consider the modal point of the characteristics that are the most common about that. So yes, these traits. Again, this is this is how even what we call this stereotypes operate that stereotypes operate. We have to understand that a stereotype is of a group, that it's going to be what it's going to. People will notice certain traits. They will notice them because they're so common in them. But this is going to be usually the modal or median group of it, right? The modal and median of them, in the sense that you look at the large group, there's going to be distribution of behavior. There's going to have, and what's going to happen is the amount of behavior that is going to be the one that is the most frequent is going to get attention. And then there's going to be those who have more of that or less of that, right? That's classical. This brings us back to Aristotle's understanding of virtue, right? Virtue is a means between two success, a deficiency, and excess, right? So this is going to be a very interesting thing in this sense, to understand what we mean here in that. We understand what we mean here in that by understanding that the generation cannot have this kind of unified thing. It's going to be a distribution, and it's going to be a distribution such that there's going to be those who have outliers on the extreme end, on both extremes. There's going to be those who lack those capacities or have superabundances of that, or even it's gone beyond that. Okay, in other words, it's not just the categorization of excess, but it's a different. It is what is that trait may have a positive, an alternative that's positive, and an alternative that's negative. In other words, it's that the middle state is basically the most modal in that sense, the largest noticeable group. So this is the problem with generational analysis. And generational analysis would have to be like any demographic. Any demographic is only as valuable as the validity of the thing to it, what it's talking about. And the broader the broader the phenomena you're dealing with, the less good you're going to be on it, because it's you're going to see because what the number, the size of the sizes of the things may be such that it's really not one thing, it's multiple different things. That there is no relationship between, in other words, that modal point of distribution is not a modal point, but a specific grouping of certain things that have really only superficial relations with the other ones. Okay, so you have really multiple groups here, not one group. And to understand them as multiple groups in relationship as a mere distribution of individual types within a framework may make a better understanding. This is basic social science analysis and political analysis. So classes are just simply a social construct in that sense, right? Yeah, it is. It is a tool we use to do things. Demographics are constructed elements. So that therefore, when we look at the things like even generations, that is it's a conceptual construction of a generation. It's a useful thing. Now, you're going to say, well, but there's fathers and aunts. Well, that's different. That's not generation. So generational analysis can be useful, but it's going to be limited. And it always will have to be contextualized within given specific cultural context. But again, this is what I said last week on this, is that the problem here is capitalism and global communications. And this is why literature, this is the reason why postmodernism becomes popular is because of its foundation on literary cultural dynamics, linguistic dynamics. This is why the postmoderns kind of, particularly the postmodern left, is so, because one of the things that the modern world, the world we now have, because of global communications, creates realities. Now, this is something this is, how can they create realities? How can it create new communities? This is Benedict Anderson's famous book, Imagine Communities, that he wrote in the 1990s, which is, I think, I I think this is one of those books that we're still confronting in that sense, because his idea is that social communities are constructs, but are they willful constructs? Yeah, soccer teams and things like this, and loyalties of this. Therefore, we can have voluntaries. This is the whole Gemeinschaft, Gesellschaft problem all over again. The community versus society problem asserting itself. But the question is, can there be global community? Or can the internet and internet chat groups and people through the internet, through virtual digital representation, create bonds that are strong enough bonds that they can strong enough bonds that they even can overpower traditional things like family, kin group relationships, community, localized communities, or even national, civic ties, civic bonds. And this is what that book I was talking about. I was it The Civic Bargain by Wallace and or Ober, about the question of bonds. The idea of the civic bargain is the bargain. Its bond is the con. I have to go read that book. I got it. I've had a couple weeks. I've not had time to do it. I kind of glanced at it quickly. It is kind of like an attempt to justify. We attempt to rebuild civic order in that sense, but it's kind of, and it will be an academic left position. But I think there's much to learn from that in a sense. Because Orber, being a classical scholar, understands that the origins of ancient world and how it emerges and how it broke down too. So, what am I doing here? You're going to be saying, okay, you just wasted a lot of our time. Why did you go on to this boomer truth thing? And why did you turn this? On Corliss's point. And Corliss's point about this question of, I think, Corliss, I'm not so, I think AA is doing this because he only knows how to approach politics through the cultural lens. Because he sees the left doing this. I think this is a very it's not. I think he's following the path of Yarvin in this sense, and even of what's his name, Carlyle. This idea of culture, and it maybe even I don't want to get into this, but there's a what is that guy, Babbitt, Irving Babbitt. A lot of the conservatives I grew up with when I was a child, the conservative movement of the late 60s and early 50s, 60s, and 70s. Some of the leading thinkers were kind of big cheerleaders of Babbitt, Irving Babbitt, Babbittism. I never saw and Babbitt is a culturalist. Understanding is a cultural. There's this, and I think this is why many of these people who are now engaged in the culture conflict, the culture fight, the culture war, right? The culture Kampf. My left-wing politics, my feminist radicals say, "See, this is Nazi culture war. This is a reference to Nazi guilt by association nonsense." That there is the culture Kampf, the culture war, right? And it is the culture war. What is the culture war? The culture war was the conflict between basically starting in the 1960s of the radical left taking over the institutions, academia, culture, media, And they are successful. They capture the institutions. As we talk about the long march, using the metaphor of Mao's march in the hills, the long march to the institutions, right? And I'd like to just think about that for a second and reflect on that. Well, there's no one coming here. I'm surprised. I think I think what's happening here is the time. I hope it's now just 11 o'clock, and now it's almost 12 on the east. I might have to rearrange this that this is done this time only because of daylight savings. Maybe daylight savings is not, who knows what's in the hearts of daylight savings world. Well, that's it. About what am I? I just want to deal with this. He says, well, I'm just kind of in a, I'm not in an AA mood. I think AA would do well to write that up and make a little book about the Boomer Truth regime and put it in print in that sense, put it in a book form, a booklet form or something like this, present his argument of the Boomer Truth regime in a clear, coherent fashion rather than have to sift through all the essay, all the videos. There are many of them. Make it coherent and clear. I still think my critique will be correct, and why it's not valid, or what its fundamental flaw will be, in that sense, which is similar to the fun. We can in social science, where many of us are pragmatists, we follow Richard Feynman's point. The sciences, if it works, it works. Okay, there is this idea that a lot of behavioral scientists followed Dewey's perception of this. That the pragmatist had a problem with truth. They really couldn't. They saw the usefulness of it and the validity of it, but really did not had a problem positing a foundational moment. And given the cracks of the other, it's rather saying, well, let's take this as conditional. You can see this in the work of James and even Pierce. C.S. Pierce. Both of the where Dewey is kind of a latter. People will say Dewey a lot. And, Dewey's the last. It's the last gasp of the pragmatist. He's no James and he's no Pierce. He lacks. I read Dewey, and Dewey's just the popularizer. He's a Voltaire, not a Descartes. He's a Voltaire of pragmatism. He's not the real intellectual heart of pragmatism. Pragmatism has its foundations in Pierce and James, and they are offering kind of slightly different things. And Dewey is kind of just propagating it and bringing it into other disciplines. And he accomplished certain things like knowledge, the philosophy of knowledge, epistemology. But again, that's the problem of pragmatism. Is a problem of epistemology. That's what it is. But in social science, pragmatism leads us to a view that if some phenomena, if a concept is useful to help us explain something, it doesn't matter if it's true. Okay, as long as it's useful. This is why in social science, like pure statisticians would argue, certain data cannot be used in regression analysis, because the rule of regression analysis or statistical use of regression models of mathematics is that it has to have certain characteristics: linear, integral, linear, continual, ordinal, linear, continual, integral. That integral, integral means that every step, like ordinal means numbers, 1, 2. There's an order. There's an order to numbers, right? And that there's linear means that line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that integral means every space between it are equal to every other space. and its continuum means it keeps on going. Okay, well, sex is an either or. And Murray, in his little, in his little guide, in his appendices to some of his books, talk about, guide to statistics. Say, well, he talks about this thing called logistical regression, where you engage in making using regression to variables or data sets, a data point that is that is not it's binary data like sex, employment, things like that. Now this is problematic, but in a multiple regression or things that might be that this might have some value, might work. So this is and pure statisticians will balk at this, like even things like party identification. You take a variable as party identification. Well, how can you make that? How can you put that as a regression analysis? People might, but how are in a country like any country, political parties? How are the different parties reducible in terms in terms of the data system that you're dealing with? How does that data meet the criteria to be properly used in regression? It isn't, but you can still do it. And that's the pragmatic character of the social sciences, that it's willing to sometimes say, okay, this is not proper, or we know that this kind of data is not meet the requirement, but we're going to use it anyways because it works. And this is something Feynman in his discussion about science talked about, right? That whole discussion he had about if something works, and that's also something that we can say in Kuhn's the scientific structure of revolutions of scientific structures, classic 1968 book, or Thomas Kuhn talks about the way knowledge operates in paradigms, right? And as long as the paradigm explains things well, people uphold it, and it reinforces its interest. It's only when the paradigm no longer explains it well that we look at it can no longer explain it, and then people start denying it or doubting it, and then once they doubt it, alternatives will emerge to challenge it, right? Or that leads to, and then maybe either then there's no consensus and it's conflict, or if there's consensus in the sense that what happens is a new paradigm will emerge, a one that has consensus in the view. And what the paradigm does is then it suppresses alternatives, right? That's Kuhn's very fundamental work on this. And I think the history of science and knowledge, I think it is political in the sense. I think this is a wonderful book for that. This is why political scientists love that book in the 1960s. In the 1970s, in that sense, because I think it does help. It understands science and knowledge in terms of a social structure, which it is. So that's therefore the boomer. I think back to the point about this is that science is pragmatic. So therefore, the question is maybe there is some usefulness of things like generational things if it explains well. Now, particularly in a global setting, the problem I have is that I think it's not going to be a good measure. It's going to create false histories, false truths, false realities that then become realities, new myths. This is something I think AA and his types need to understand, that myths can be political. Myths can be political, and myths can create a political world. Myths can create beliefs, and those beliefs then motivate political behavior. I think he understands that to some degree. I think his book on the moral compass of Shakespeare is actually would indicate to me that he understands that. But again, I brought up AA today because I had nothing else to really talk about. I've had a really bad, this is not productive week in terms of things. I've taught I worked. I really wanted to get some writing done this week. I didn't get any production done either. Um, um, I'm going to be doing my paper in a couple weeks. I'm going to be giving my paper at Budapest. I got my ticket, so yeah, I got my ticket. Yeah, rah rah rah. My wife's going to go with me. We have some, so I'm kind of feeling good about that. I'm going to be talking about force and fraud in Aristotle's politics, force, fraud, and persuasion, and that very Machiavellian themes in Aristotle. What else? What I've been kind of researching on, I've been reading. I mean, I've been doing some research. I've been doing a lot of research on metaphor, the metaphors of political analysis. I've been reading a lot. I read like 30, 40 articles about metaphors. I just started getting interested in this. I got kind of interested in the question of power a little bit. This tiny thing, but metaphor, the scientific aspect of metaphor. I kind of addressed it today. I think it has been my, I think my last week AA's discussion kind of made me think about the question of the role of metaphor in the social sciences and particularly in politics, political phenomena. Another thing is I've been kind of looking into, thinking about part of my Aristotle thing. I have to do my political anthropology. I have to get my ass off my ass and get that worked. But another thing I've been thinking about again is power. I in my class on Tuesday we talked about some aspects, and I kind of always talk about Weber. We always use Weber because the classic you have to use Weber's three Herrenschaft, his discussion of leadership and authority, the classic thing. And then I thought about our friend Little Kojève, because I think Kojève, a notion of authority is actually interesting, but it's weird. It's an interesting thought experiment, I think, to the degree, but there's also problems with it. You can go see I have a whole series. We read the book, we went through it, and I discussed it. But I think there is a lot to be done there. And the other thing, I don't really know what to say. We're at the hour thing. I went over today. I talked a lot about Corliss. Corleone's here today, so he's missed it, So I was hoping to talk about something more, but I just didn't have any real. Please leave comments. Leave structures. Hit the like buttons as much as you can. We've had some boosts. We had a number of people join this week. We had a 6-person increase. Oh, yay! And on the 24th of this month, my old NIU colleague, person I graduated. No, we were both NIU graduates, PhDs, Northern Illinois University PhDs. Lori Johnson about 2 weeks ago. We did an interview, not this Tuesday, previous Tuesday. Did an interview. She recorded it for her Magdalene Academy, and they're going to release it on the 24th. She said, so I'm looking forward to that. She has a much bigger audience than I do, so yeah, maybe I'll see something. I really, I don't know. I should do something more. People say I should. I'm kind of in a bad mood because I'm tired of. I'm just a little tired. I'm sorry. I'm just in a bad mood. It's kind of like the time of year. It's the season. It's nice. The weather's getting nice, and I need to go do some reading, some more. I need to finish my papers and things and start thinking about the next project. I should be getting my Aristotle's Politics book, my regime book done, but I don't think it's going to happen this year at all. I just, and it's going to be tiring in that sense. The other thing is, I'm looking into care, the concept of care. It's part of my idea, and I need to go talk to a colleague of mine and to see how he is, because he's going to be going to the Midwest this year and busy. Until the Midwest, he's occupado. But I would like to sit down and maybe make a little book on the forms of rule based on the article we wrote together, and something I've been thinking about. And then deal with care. One of the aspects is care. And I think care in Augustine and care and love in that sense too. Love in that sense is a political concept. This has been really dealing with this to me. I have been frustrated with this. There's also the thing about the crown. I gave a video long ago, 2020. It's in our archive on the crown. The crown. I was never a medievalist. I've now become kind of a medievalist in that sense. I've become interested in it. I'm still an Aristotelian. I still like the ancient modern. I am the course I would love to give. I like to give a course in Aristotle's politics, but I also like to give a course on Machiavelli's Prince, which I'm planning on doing soon. I'm hoping to do soon, someplace. I'm going to talk to someone in about a couple weeks. Probably at a Catholic university here, and maybe they'll ask me to do a course, and maybe I'll do the Prince there. Shock the class. Do a course on the Prince. Just do the Prince, and just do the Prince, and just give the reading and how to read the thing in English and conceptual. Think about these questions and concerns. So that's it. Now we're an hour into our thing, where I'm over. You guys like it? Please like it. If you don't like it, don't like it. This is kind of a slow day. Please leave comments or things you want me to talk about or raise issues about in the live streams. The more you do that, the more I'm kind of have something to talk about, and I can work. Other than just what I'm interested in that sense, that's not fair in that sense. I would. I should follow some more news issues, but there's no news issues. I don't want to talk about. I don't want to be a news channel. I'm not a news channel. And I don't really want to get involved in. I know some people from here, from my interrelation with President Sunday. I don't find his direction useful. His getting into the drama of internet personalities. I don't care. Who cares about Rouge? Who cares about this Kalfas? These are nobodies in the real scheme of things. Just like that, and that we have an internet world that people say, well, Sargon's like that. Oh, Sargon, is nothing too. I agree with that. He's not a major thinker. He's not a major idea. He's just a personality on these things. But he's far more interesting than Vosh or any of those guys. Even AA, I look at AA and I look at him as a competent teacher. In fact, I would strongly recommend anyone who wants to learn to write, learn how to write and think in that terms. On the little course he offers that he sells on the Trivium. I think he's a good as a student of Renaissance literature and the student of this. He knows this. I'm not going to deny that. I think he would be a good teacher in that sense, teaching. And I think this is a thing like this. This is why I hope he and Michael Millerman interconnect some more. That's another person I always have great respect for. Millerman is a good thinker in that sense. I may disagree with his interest. I think he goes a little too deep into. I think he really thinks more of Dugin than I do. I'm not. I think there's too many contradictions in Dugin. He's interesting. There is something that is interesting about him, But another side of me, I see the contradictions that make it. Interesting is not enough. It has to be coherent. It has to have a logic to it. It has to have a system of coherence and make sense internally. And the problem with his model is it doesn't work that way. And there's too many flaws in it, particularly his fourth political theory, which I can never finish reading it. I mean, people go criticize it. Well, why can't read it? Why did you criticize it? It's unreadable. Same thing with Bronze Age Pervert, Bronze Age Mindset book. It's fun to read, but it's not coherent. It's not a coherent argument. It doesn't have internal logic. There's too many contradictory concepts in it. I can see its power and I can see its insight. This is where I would disagree with Tim Burns at Baylor. Tim Burns had a hysterical, oh, no, this is horrible. And what's his name? Damian Lichter. And then, there's Ronald Breiner at former Toronto, the guy who kind of betrayed Milliman. He's having Trump. He's like a hysterical woman on this. Oh my God! The Straussians are responsible for Kosciuszko because of his his PhD dissertation. Oh my God! And spouting conspiracy that he took some of his money from his book and made his book popular. Breiner, you are I'm looking at you and I see a senile old person who's gone by his intellectual sell-by date. I've respected all of your work on civil society and things like this, and civil religion and the idea of political judgment. But now you have basically people like Breiner now and their hysteria about populism and the alt-right and people like this. Because they see Nazis everywhere. And like Hannah Arendt. I love reading Hannah Arendt's letters to Mary McCarthy in the 1950s, saying Nazis everywhere in America, that Eisenhower was Hitler, Nixon was Hitler. Come on, you are. This is a kind of paranoia on the left, particularly the Jewish left. The Jewish left has a specific paranoia and hatred of the charismatic demagogues, charismatic leaders. They hate the masses. They have a problem, and I think this is something that and it's sad. They have something to say. At least. Hannah Arendt said that privately. She never wrote essays saying such things. Breiner has. Breiner is publicly pushing that stuff out there about this. No, I actually wish Michael Millerman would criticize Breiner intellectually, do a radical critique of Breiner, showing how his current position repudiates his own position. I think that is the case. And I think it is senility. It is just, I mean, I had to stop communicating with someone I was very close to, Roger Masters, simply because at the latter stage of his life, his dementia and his senility it was impossible to rationally communicate with him in any kind of way that did not we would get into argument about Trump. And there is this dementia characteristic in that sense. There's this dementia characteristic of and I see this in the writing of Breiner. I can see the dementia. That this fear, this innate question that he has about the fear of this, and that this phobic reaction. I don't want to be a psychoanalyzing, but I'm going to psychoanalyze here. It is a phobic reaction that overpowers the rational construct of the mind and the ability to act rationally. In many ways, I would argue, Hannah Arendt was at least not phobic. She was able to control her phobia intellectually, whereas a lot of people aren't. And I'm kind of looking at this, and Briner, I was just reading Briner's essay about this, and I'm just saying, really? And then he mentions in that essay about selective reading dissertation by BAP. Again, this is the same problem with the overreaction by Tim Burns. I like Tim Burns. Tim Burns, okay guy. I mean, I don't think he ever liked me that much. I know he doesn't really want to help. He never. I think once he got the trailer job, he didn't want me coming there, ever going there. So maybe he doesn't know me. Maybe I'm understanding it that I overstate my importance. For Tim Burns never thinks of me. I think okay. I think Tim Burns would not like the fact that I am a man of the right. He's a nice, sensible. He's a nice bourgeois academic liberal in that sense. He'll say conservative things or raise conservative things, being a nice Straussian. But although I like Strauss and I'm very much influenced by Strauss, I'm not going to. I have none of the paranoia that many of these students of Strauss have. I have no problem with the people. I have no problem with the masses. I don't fear them. And I think that's a good point. Now we're at 116 over. I think it was nice to finally have two people in the room now watching. It's a shame. Again, daylight saving time problems. I was trying to be consistent with my time frame. I hoping to get the by the end, starting of April Fools. We'll have I might even have an April Fools live stream just for fun, if I'm able. Well, therefore, that's it. Because April Fools will be Easter Monday here, I think, if I'm correct. You guys, take care. Please like the thing, hit like. Subscribe, get another subscribe. Because we said we had a boost of subscriptions. That's great. I expect maybe some more. Please look the channel out. You can look at the social media links below, or even the academic social media links below them. Or now, if you want to help me to do what I do, you can do so through Patreon or subscribe to our links below that. Or buy one of my books, 3 books that I have currently available. Go there. Again, I'm going to request people to put comments and questions in the discussion in the areas, and please raise things that you want me to talk about in future live streams. Okay, that's it for today. I'm at my hour moment. I'm a little over, so I'll stop. Take care and have a good day. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. See you.